Good evening, Nick and Min from VolumeProfileTrader.com on Monday, June 25th, and the S&P basically opened up, traded around the lows, this high volume area low for the year, got down pretty close to those levels, and now we're seeing a small bounce in the after hours. We'll see what the market does going overnight, but I think the point remains that this 1320 to 1300 level is your major pivot, and you want to trade accordingly based off of these levels. And I do think right here right now we should see some type of bounce and a push up towards 1320, and really that's all you can expect for now. That is the range for now. And to say, well, if I buy here with expectations to sell it this prior swing high, I think that's a bit ambitious. And likewise, to sell in this area for a move down to these lows, and I'm just pointing out these lows just because they're the most recent swing points. I think both of those are ambitious, and I don't think that is the way to go about trading this week. There's a lot of economic news, and we should see a resolution one way or the other, but to guess is not the right way to do it. So I think the best way to describe what's going on here is to show you maybe an intraday chart, looking at an hourly standpoint. We dropped down below this month's point of control, the current month, basically traded at the bottom of this high volume area, bottom of the channel, value area low, all within this tight range. So you'd expect some type of stabilization. Volume was light for 3 hours straight, and then the last hour, just like every last hour, you get increase in volume. It happened to be to the buy side, or I should say the bias was to the upside. And for members who know about the trade setup, this looks pretty valid for a potential bounce, basically a long entry looking for higher prices. But, what are your expectations? They shouldn't be much higher than 1320, just because that's how the market is. So let's look at some names that may give us some opportunity, or I should say, looking at names in hindsight. Chevron, last month's point of control, this month's point of control, and we're getting a little U-turn off of these levels. But your expectations can only be back up to this high volume area, somewhere to close the gap, and realize that the downtrend. I mean, look at what just happened. We went from value area high to value area low in a couple of days. So you'd expect some type of throwback, but will it be a lower high off of this point of control level? And I think that's what you're ultimately looking for. So you play this bounce up to basically 1% higher on the S&P, and if you can catch a name or two that can bounce more than that, then do it accordingly. But if that's not your type of trade, then just wait on the sidelines and see when the S&P gets back. Well, the point of control for the month should become 1309, this range right here, probably overnight as long as we trade in it. But I think the point is that you're looking for a move, like I've said already, 1300 to 1320. From there, it's not, you don't want to trade too heavily into that, getting too long or too short one way or the other. There will be a trade opportunity, and we'll catch it just like usual. But for now, just be patient. Realize the opportunity right here, right now, should be to the upside. We should see a fall through to the upside. I did do a little bit of buying today. Nothing too crazy. I had a trade on Apple that was intraday. It was pretty pitiful, actually. It was off of these lows. I actually had a really nice entry, and I took it for a couple dollars higher, just some at-the-money calls. And I basically, my expectations weren't high, and I yanked them off for pretty small gains. But we get those intraday opportunities every once in a while that can be taken advantage of, and that was one of them. But overall, Apple closed weak, and you need to be aware of that. All right, I showed Chevron, Intel, value area low, point of control from last month. This high volume area here, and we got a pretty nice U-turn off of value area low. It's hard to look to catch this falling knife just because it looks like Chevron, straight move to the downside. But for a bounce, you should see maybe 2 or 3% to the upside on something like Intel. Oil breaking down, but we have a little double bottom here. I would be looking for a retracement back into the this high volume area here. That's a decent move, and if you want to look to play that, look at something like USO, buying a call spread, maybe buying just outright shares of USO, keeping your stop tight, but looking for a move up towards around 31, 32, 31, 31 half. That's where I'd look to yank this position off entirely. But nevertheless, looks pretty good. Actually, if you want to, look to keep it for longer, just realize the flaw that USO does have. Gold textbook bounce off of this point of control from last month. Really a nice pop to the upside. However, volume was pretty light, so you have to be careful of that. The trade was to sell it back a couple of days ago. Now you're getting the rebound. This is where you look to take profits, an ideal spot. So, you're seeing an oversold bounce on gold. Silver, same thing, oversold bounce, but this still looks like it's in a downtrend. Looking at some trades that I put on Friday and actually worked out. Morgan Stanley, the last hour of the day, put on a 14 by 13 puts, the put spreads. That was for, I believe, 20 cents, 21 cents. Ended up yanking profits off for about 30 or 40 cents, something like that. So I know it was more than a double on the position, but it came right down to the target, value area low. That's exactly what I was looking for. It was just a base hit, and it just happened to do it on one day. So that was pretty nice. Baker Hughes, I took some profits on this today. This was one where on one of these bars right here, did the 39 by 36 put spreads in expiring in August. They were up about 30 or 40%, something like that, and I yanked off half the position just to exercise some discipline, realizing that the S&P is at a level where it should bounce. I can always put the position back on. So that's just something to be aware of. And the last thing I did going into the weekend was shorting the SPY into this strength, or I should say into this little bounce. And what it was ultimately for was a hedge against any extra longs that I had, and it ended up paying off. Took that position off, actually reversed it, looking for a bounce back up towards 132.50, 132.75, where I plan to take the position off. But right here, right now, I think risk is defined. You keep a stop pretty much right under these lows, and you look for some type of attempt to close the gap and kind of go from there. So really, that's it. Not too much going on that's not expected. VIX failing at this 21 level again. Just continue to watch that. Seems to be like a good level. But other than that, I think that you just play it pretty close to the vest. There's no reason to, be overexposed to the market one way or the other. Cash is a very valid position right now. Look at the dollar. It's in the upper right hand side. So being long dollars is perfectly fine. Dollar had a very nice bounce off last month's point of control. Now it's at this month's point of control. Is it going to go higher? I would say so. Longs holding from these lows should still be long. There's really no reason to cover yet. Wait for some type of signal. Look how light the selling pressure has been. Really since the lows, the selling pressure has been light. So just be aware of that. Ride the trend. Keep your stop trailing, in my opinion, and see how far it takes you. Euro, just to look at it. Textbook basically sale off of last month's point of control. Here we are at this month's point of control. There's no reason to take this short position off. Keep your stop trailing and let it do what it's going to do. That's kind of how I see it. Now, if we get some strength in the euro, then it might cause a little bit of short covering. But overall, we're still failing from last month's point of control, and that's the level to be aware of. So take care. That's really it. So take care. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.